Have you ever wondered how a single empire managed to defeat entire civilizations even when everything seemed to be against it? In this video, we will reveal the most ingenious military strategies of ancient Rome that left even the greatest generals of the time in shock. If you think war is just about brute force, get ready to rethink everything you knew about historic battles. Rome faced colossal enemies, wealthy empires, larger armies, legendary generals like Hannibal, and yet it turned the tables with tactics so unexpected that they changed the course of history. If you feel that the most epic stories are hidden in the details that no one tells, stay until the end. What you will discover here will change the way you see Rome's power in the ancient world. But before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're subscribed to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos packed with historical curiosities and Roman Empire tactics. And now, to truly begin, let's see how Antiochus III dared to challenge Rome and how this dispute started to take on the contours of a true epic war. The ambition of Antiochus III and Rome's new world. Imagine a leader who dreams of the glory of Alexander, rebuilding an empire that spans the East. This is Antiochus III, a man with a fierce gaze, skin tanned by the eastern sun, who wears a cloak embroidered with golden threads representing his Seleucid royalty. He studies the map of Greece and all of Asia Minor, drawing up expansion plans. Meanwhile, Rome, emerging victorious from the Punic Wars, begins to see itself as a Mediterranean power and advances into areas that were once far from its domain. If Rome dominated the Western Mediterranean, now the East caught the Senate's attention. Apparently, the Greek peninsula was to be a Roman sphere of influence, a way of saying they didn't want competitors. But Antiochus III had his own plans, and every move he made, every coastal city he conquered, sounded like a direct challenge to Rome's new authority. The difference between them was that Antiochus saw Greece as the cradle of Hellenistic culture, not just a colony. He believed that restoring Seleucid hegemony there would be a way to honor Alexander's conquests. Meanwhile, an increasingly confident Rome viewed this interference as a direct affront. After all, what Antiochus was doing was almost saying, "Hey Rome, you don't control everything around here." In this power game, tension began to grow. Roman diplomats were sent to negotiate, but Antiochus, in luxurious attire, received them in his enormous marble-columned hall, making it clear he would not back down. They returned to Rome with the message, either he stops or we take action. The Aetolian League, which had previously been allied with Rome, started seeing in Antiochus an opportunity to overthrow Roman influence on Greek soil. The seed of conflict was sown. We talked about tense diplomacy, but what about Antiochus's secret trump card that kept every Roman senator awake at night? A name that marked history and sparked fear. Hannibal. Let's find out how this encounter changed. The entire scenario: Hannibal, the Phantom of Rome, returns. Hannibal Barca, the brilliant Carthaginian general, was no ordinary man. Tall, strong, scarred, with that concentrated expression of someone who has dodged death many times. When the Roman Senate discovered he was under the protection of Antiochus III, it was as if all the ghosts of past wars had returned to haunt the capital. After all, Hannibal was the strategist who nearly brought Rome to collapse in the Second Punic War. Exiled from Carthage, Hannibal found a safe haven in Antiochus's palace. The Seleucid king, in turn, was aware of the potential of this feared man. Besides being an exceptional strategist, his name sent shivers down the spines of any Roman citizen as he represented the terror of the Battle of Cannae. Hannibal, at the peak of his 45 years, still carried the determination to defeat Rome, even while far from Carthage. Hannibal's influence began to shape secret plans. He believed that if Rome were attacked on multiple fronts, including its homeland or strategic locations like Greece, it could collapse. Hannibal advised Antiochus III on Roman weaknesses, from logistics to fragile Italian alliances. All this while maintaining a discreet profile, walking the corridors of the Seleucid palace and being respectfully greeted by local soldiers. For Rome, the situation was unsustainable. They not only had to deal with the growing power of the Seleucids, but also with an enemy who seemed to know every Roman tactic. Thus, the conviction formed. Action was necessary. But how do you fight a powerful army? And on top of that, this military genius who had already resurfaced in history more than once? The answer would begin to emerge in the formation of new alliances, and also in demonstrating strength on future battlefields. Now that Hannibal has entered the game, tensions multiply. What would be the first major clash to test this new power configuration? Would Greece really be the starting point of the flames of conflict? The Aetolian League and the first clash in Greece. The Aetolian League was not just a small group of Greek city-states. Formed by warriors accustomed to mountainous terrain, they had fought alongside Rome against Macedonia in the past. But now, they felt sidelined by the Romans. Hearing Antiochus III's promises, they saw an opportunity to reclaim their freedom and power in the region. When the first Seleucid detachment set foot on Greek soil, the Aetolian League did not hesitate. Some Aetolian soldiers, with fair skin and light bronze armor, immediately turned their swords against the local Roman officers. Strong Greek cities, once submissive, were incited to rebel. The spark came with the capture of an important coastal fortress, which until then had guaranteed supply routes for the Roman troops. Rome's response was swift, led by Titus Quintius Flamininus, who wore his imposing Roman armor. The soldiers disembarked at Greek ports with the goal of quelling the revolt. A series of smaller skirmishes began to emerge. Besieged villages, ambushes along mountain trails, resistance inland. Flamininus himself, skilled in rhetoric and negotiation, tried to bring cities back into Roman loyalty with promises of protection and commercial benefits. However, the shadow of Antiochus III loomed on the horizon. What would be the next move of the Seleucid king? And how could Hannibal's presence tip the scales for the rebellious Greeks? Everything indicated that a larger confrontation was coming, something that would decide not only the fate of Greece, but also the hegemony of the entire Eastern Mediterranean. We've reached a critical point. Thermopylae, a place already steeped in history. How would Antiochus III and the Aetolian League face the Roman forces in such a legendary pass? Thermopylae, returning to the field of heroes. Thermopylae, remembered for the Spartan resistance against the Persians, was now to witness another epic confrontation. Antiochus III positioned his troops in the narrow pass, believing that there he could neutralize Rome's numerical superiority. His Seleucid phalanxes, strong men with dark beards and gleaming armor, formed a wall of spears in the mountain's throat. On the other side, Titus Quintius Flamininus and the Roman soldiers were not intimidated by the pass's legend. They knew the power of their heavy infantry. Shields aligned, formations tightened, and when they advanced, the clash of swords echoed off the rocks. The battle was intense. The long spears of the Seleucids wreaked havoc, but Roman discipline and their block shields pushed the enemy back. At one point, Flamininus ordered a contingent to ascend the lateral trails to flank the Seleucid phalanxes from behind. Desperate, Antiochus's soldiers found themselves surrounded. The king himself, his royal cloak billowing, had to retreat to avoid capture. It was a bitter defeat. While Antiochus had dreamed of repeating heroic feats at Thermopylae, he ended up having to abandon Greece. The news of Antiochus's retreat spread quickly, undermining the confidence of many Greek allies. The Aetolian League, once confident, began to rethink its loyalty. Thermopylae had become a symbol not only of bravery, but of how determined Rome was, to show that the Mediterranean would not be a free-for-all for the Seleucid king. Now, the war would take even greater turns, as Asia Minor was to become the new stage for conflicts, and the sea, long dominated by whoever had the best navy, would also be the scene of decisive battles. Want to know how Rome, along with important allies, gained the advantage at sea against Antiochus's forces? Get ready for the next session. The naval war and the maritime blockade. While Antiochus licked his wounds after Thermopylae, Rome forged alliances with naval powers like Rhodes and Pergamon. The Seleucid navy, which once inspired respect, had to face combined fleets from various city-states allied with Rome. And the sea, once a deep blue, gradually turned to the color of the iron of swords and shields, reflecting the intensity of the fighting. Roman ships, loaded with legionaries and siege machines, approached the coasts, dominated by Antiochus. At the same time, fast vessels from Rhodes used hit-and-run tactics to target the weak points of the Seleucid navy. In the midst of this game, Pergamon contributed with local knowledge of the routes and support with its own war galleys. Antiochus's navy suffered heavy losses, especially in confrontations such as the one at Mayon. This maritime blockade hurt Antiochus not only militarily but also economically. With no free routes for supplies and trade, the Seleucid king saw his coffers diminish, while Rome received constant resources from its allies and territories. Naval superiority was beginning to decide the fate on the mainland. It was clear that even though Antiochus longed to continue the fight, he needed to regroup his troops and rethink his strategies on land. The next step would be the infamous Battle of Magnesia, which would go down in history. But before we move on to this decisive chapter, leave a comment here. Have you already hit the like button or shared this video with someone who loves history? If you're enjoying this adventure and want more videos like this, leave a like right now and comment below what interests you most about the Roman Empire. The land returns as the stage. Antiochus, pressured by naval losses, moves his army to protect his borders. And it is then that tensions explode at Magnesia, a confrontation that would change everything. The road to Magnesia. After seeing his navy shrink before Rome's allies, Antiochus understood that the decisive fight would take place on land. He retreated to Asia Minor, regrouping every troop that was still at his disposal. Wearing a royal mantle, now less pompous, as haste left him little time for adornments, the Seleucid king began summoning generals from various regions. The presence of Hannibal, although respected, was more discreet. The Carthaginian calculated how he could support this final grand gambit. Meanwhile, Lucius Cornelius Scipio, established as the Roman commander in the region, wasted no time. He marched, along with contingents from allied cities, to ensure that every step was controlled by Rome. His gaze was cold and determined as he felt the weight of victory or failure in a campaign that could define the future of the entire Mediterranean. Some cities, once loyal to Antiochus, began to surrender to the Romans. Whether out of fear or opportunism, these urban centers opened their gates, offering provisions and support. This wave of desertion crushed the morale of the Seleucid troops, who already perceived the impressive force Rome had built over the years. Magnesia emerged as the natural choice for the final clash. Relatively flat terrain, but surrounded by mountainous areas that could decide flanking tactics. The armies approached. The dust raised by the soldiers was so thick it resembled a brown fog. If the future of Antiochus and Rome were to be decided in one single place, that place would be Magnesia. And speaking of Magnesia, how exactly did this great confrontation unfold? Get ready to learn how battle formations and surprises determined the fate of empires. The Battle of Magnesia. The Seleucid ranks consisted of long spears, well-trained phalanxes, archers from distant regions, and war elephants ready to spread panic. Antiochus believed that by outnumbering the Romans, he could encircle them and secure victory. However, this numerical advantage hid problems: lack of cohesion among troops from different cultures, and the need to control giant animals in a field already overcrowded with men. On the other side, Scipio organized the Roman army into three main divisions, with allied phalanxes, heavy infantry, and a cavalry ready to protect the flanks. The elephants that Rome had gathered were fewer in number than those of Antiochus, but Scipio placed more confidence in his disciplined infantry and his cunning to circumvent the Seleucid onslaught. When the clash began, trumpets echoed on both sides. The Seleucid phalanxes advanced toward the center, while part of the cavalry attempted to envelop the Roman flank. However, Scipio, alert, deployed archers and slingers to destabilize the elephant charge, which, in panic, ended up trampling their own men. At the same time, the Roman cavalry, reinforced by Greek allies, executed precise maneuvers against the Seleucid flanks. Antiochus's center broke. The once firm phalanx succumbed to the terror of the uncontrolled elephants and the pressure of the Roman shields. In just a few hours, screams of confusion and the clashing of metal dominated the field. Seeing his defeat imminent, Antiochus fled amid the dust and the running troops, leaving thousands of soldiers behind. Magnesia had become the greatest humiliation of the Seleucid king. The battle ended, but the consequences were only beginning. What were the political repercussions? The surrenders and the harsh indemnities imposed on the Seleucid Empire. The Treaty of Apamea and the new order in the Mediterranean. The defeat at Magnesia forced Antiochus III to negotiate. He sent messengers dressed in simple, almost humble attire in order to spare his king further humiliation. The agreement, which would become known as the Treaty of Apamea, dictated that Antiochus would cede all lands west of the Taurus Mountains, pay heavy indemnities, surrender his fleet, and even some of his elephants. It was an unprecedented blow. With this treaty, Rome secured the independence of previously oppressed cities, rewarded allies like Pergamon and Rhodes with territories, and extended its influence to regions far beyond Latium. Roman hegemony was no longer merely Western. Now, the Greek and Hellenistic world was equally under its vigilant gaze. Antiochus, once adorned in purple cloaks, now was nothing more than a limited sovereign. His empire was shrinking, and he had to deal with internal revolts and the consequences of having bet so high. Even Hannibal ended up with no room to maneuver, either being handed over or pursued according to Roman demands. This treaty paved the way for a new order in the Mediterranean. We now see a bolder Rome, ready to face other great powers, such as Macedonia and Ptolemaic Egypt. And from that moment on, Roman influence would only grow, defining the political and cultural foundations of the region for centuries to come. But do not think that it was only at Magnesia that Rome demonstrated its strength against the Hellenistic phalanxes. There were other epic battles that consolidated Roman dominance, such as Cynoscephalai and Pydna. Want to understand better how Roman tactics prevailed? The other battles that cemented Roman power. The victory against Antiochus III was not a bolt from the blue. Even before that, Rome shocked the Hellenistic world by defeating Philip V of Macedon at the Battle of Cynoscephalai, 197 BC. The Macedonian phalanxes, with their long sarissas, seemed invincible in open fields. But the discipline of the Roman infantry and its greater flexibility made the difference. The Macedonians found themselves flanked and succumbed to Roman strategy. Later, at Pydna, 168 BC, Lucius Aemilius Paulus decisively crushed Perseus's army, Philip V's son, ensuring the end of Macedonian dominance. What do these two battles have in common with Magnesia? All demonstrate that the phalanx formation, though powerful, had weaknesses that the Romans learned to exploit, whether by using their infantry in segmented formations or by better leveraging the terrain. Such victories gave Rome an aura of invincibility. Its generals knew that if they maintained cohesion, training, and intelligent exploitation of the terrain, they could face even larger armies. Meanwhile, the Hellenistic powers, so accustomed to the traditional phalanx, were slow to adapt to the Roman style of warfare, which used more maneuverable legionaries and combined tactics of infantry and cavalry. These battles, taken together, charted the destiny of the Mediterranean. Rome became the protagonist, and the old Hellenistic kingdoms dwindled in influence. Roman culture itself absorbed much of Greek culture, but politically, power definitively passed into Rome's hands. It was a prelude to a world that would never be the same. We have reached the final moment of this epic story, but there is still one crucial point. How did these Roman victories impact daily life in Rome itself? And what can we learn from all this today? A legacy for life in Rome. Rome's victories against Antiochus III, the Macedonians, and other Eastern powers shaped not only geopolitics, but the daily life of the Romans. New slaves, new trade routes, and an avalanche of cultural influences arrived in Latium. Latin mixed with Greek expressions, architecture began to feature columns and designs inspired by Hellenism, and gastronomy was enriched. However, this growth also brought challenges. With the enrichment of generals and senators, inequality within Rome increased, planting the seeds for future social conflicts. If there is one thing history teaches us, it is that no empire expands without internal consequences. And it was precisely this disparity that would fuel tensions in the following centuries. For Roman rulers, Magnesia and the other battles served as a reminder that planning, discipline, and diplomacy are as important as brute strength. The cunning in forging alliances and the ability to adapt to enemy tactics ensured victories on battlefields that seemed impossible to conquer. It was this power of adaptation that kept Rome one step ahead of its rivals. Today, looking back at antiquity, we can be inspired by the Romans' ability to overcome adversity while also reflecting on the risks of excessive power and arrogance. The stories of Antiochus III and Hannibal show us that even the greatest military geniuses can fall if they face determined adversaries with solid strategies. And it is precisely this lesson that invites us to conclude our journey with one question. What makes an empire, no matter how great, stand the test of time? We have reached the end of this journey through history, where proud kings, legendary generals, and ambitious senators fought battles that forever changed the course of the Mediterranean. From the Seleucid phalanxes to the Roman formations, we witnessed how wisdom and discipline can prevail even over numerically superior armies. If you enjoyed this time-traveling adventure and want more fascinating stories, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share this video with your friends. Got a curiosity or want to discuss a historical detail? Leave your comment. Thank you for watching, and until our next dive into the incredible world of ancient Rome and the Empire.